Heartless, Forbidden, Book 1. Written by Suzana Thompson. Narrated by Paulina Schubert.
Chapter 24. I expected Cade to come chasing after me, but I walked back to his house alone. Maybe Taylor had convinced him to get back together with her and they were making up for lost time. The thought was disturbing after the scene I had just witnessed between them. Taylor had been so desperate to get him back, while Cade had been so cold toward her. If he did get back together with her, it would essentially be for the sex that she was offering him, since he had shown no emotion toward her. I couldn't see him falling in love with her, but I couldn't imagine falling in love with anyone. Loving meant caring just as much about that person as you did about yourself, and that didn't seem to be in Cade's nature. I mulled all this over while mindlessly watching a cooking show in the living room. When Cade came home an hour later, he criticized me for my behavior. "You left without even saying goodbye." Morgan was upset. "She had Logan there," I replied. "I'm sure she didn't miss me." "She did," Cade insisted. "She was all worried that she was a terrible hostess." I assessed his expression and saw that he appeared to be sincerely upset with me over Morgan. "That's ridiculous," I declared. "I didn't leave because of her." "You need to tell her that," he said as he pulled out his phone. I couldn't get into the real reason in front of everyone, so I made up a story about you getting a headache, but Morgan didn't believe it. "Why would you say that?" I asked in dismay. "That sounds like such a fake excuse." "I couldn't think of anything else to say," he told me in exasperation. "You just let Taylor chase you off when you knew we were there for Morgan. Here, talk to her." I tried to refuse when he started to hand me his phone, but he obstinately held it out to me as a female voice answered. "Hello?" she repeated. "Cade?" "Lexi wants to talk to you," he yelled while still thrusting the phone at me. I grabbed it from him in annoyance, but pitched my voice into a pleasant tone for Morgan. "Hi, it's Lexi. I'm sorry I left without telling you," I apologized to her as I spoke into the phone. "I'm sorry it took so long to bring you a glass of lemonade," she replied anxiously. "You must think I'm hopeless. First I ruined Kate's party, and then I leave you sitting there bored. I should have—" "You were great," I assured her as I interrupted her. "Really, it wasn't you." "You don't have to pretend," she began. I immediately interrupted her again. "Honestly, Morgan, I'm telling you the truth. Me leaving had nothing to do with you. I like you, and I'd like us to be friends." "Really?" she asked in a hopeful tone. "I know I'm only a sophomore, but since we don't go to the same school, your friends won't have to know you're friends with me." "That's not even—" "No," I insisted in dismay. "I have no problem with being friends with someone that's not in my grade. That's silly. Of course we can be friends." "Oh," she said, "okay. Well, how's your headache?" "As annoying as always," I quipped. "He's standing right here listening to our conversation." After a beat, during which she realized I was talking about Cade, Morgan began to laugh at the same time that Cade remarked that I was talking on his phone, and that's why he was standing right next to it. "Yeah, I'll give it back to you in a minute," I told him. "So, it's okay if Cade gives me your number?" I asked Morgan. "Sure," she replied. "But I hope you'll come back over." "You're back," Catherine declared as she stepped into the room. "Ready to go to lunch?" She was leaving later this afternoon, and my mom and Robert were returning a couple hours after her flight. Mom and I had spoken several times during this week, and I assumed that Robert had also been keeping in contact with Cade. I liked Catherine, but I was looking forward to having my mom back. "We're going to lunch now," I told Morgan apologetically. "But I'll come over again another day. My mom's coming home later, so—" "Oh yeah, they're on their honeymoon," Morgan said. "Okay, well, maybe after school tomorrow." I have to work every day after school this week, except Friday, so I could come over then or Saturday before work, and then I'm off on Sunday. "Wow," she responded. "I didn't know that you worked so much. And you have your date with Brandon on Friday. Well, how about Sunday then? That way you won't have to rush off to work." I had forgotten about my date, but I didn't mention that to her, especially not in front of Catherine. "Okay," I agreed. "I'll come over on Sunday. I'll text you before then," I promised before we got off the phone. "Did you forget about your date on Friday?" Cade inquired in a polite tone, but there was a glint in his eyes that told me he was putting me on the spot on purpose. I thought you were so excited about it. I am excited about it, I lied. I was just trying to make Morgan happy after you put this guilt trip on me. What guilt trip? Catherine asked. What happened? Lexi left right after we got there, Kate answered her, and Morgan got upset. Catherine looked at me in surprise. I didn't know you came back so soon. I've been upstairs packing, and I just finished before I came down to check if you were back. Why did you leave? She questioned me. Yeah, Lexi, Kate said to put more pressure on me. Why did you leave? Well, I answered as I threw it back at him. You and Taylor were having your big romantic reunion, and I could see that you wanted to be alone. I was watching his reaction, and I saw his mouth compress in aggravation when Catherine exclaimed in delight. You've gotten back together with Taylor? Oh, how lovely. I always knew you'd find your way back to each other. You're perfect for each other. So perfect, I gushed with fake girlish delight to annoy him further. He glared at me before replying to his mom in a terse tone. I'm not getting back together with her any more than you're getting back together with Dad. Catherine's expression changed into hurt and disappointment, and I felt bad for instigating this exchange between them. I should have known that Kate would have a rude response. Are we going to lunch now? I prompted. I'm really hungry after all that walking. I chattered in an attempt to get us past the unpleasantness. Those streets are so pretty, though, with all the trees. It's going to be gorgeous when the leaves change color. Catherine seemed just as eager to lighten the mood. I do miss fall. We don't get to enjoy the change of seasons in LA. The only color on the trees is when they decorate the palm trees for Christmas. Kate, however, remained sullen. It was your choice to move there. It's where I'm from, she replied. You're from Michigan, he countered. We moved to LA when I was 8, she stated. I lived there longer than I lived in Michigan. Yeah, he said derisively, because your stage mother made you work to support her, just like Lexi's mom made her work all her life, too. That is not true, I exclaimed. She never made me work. She never even suggested it. I told you I decided that on my own. Yeah, he retorted, because that's what every kid wants to do. Work. It must be so fun to work while other kids get to play. Your mom should have been a used car salesman if she got you to believe that. You promised to give her a chance, I reminded him angrily. But you're still talking stupid crap about her that's not even true. Cade, Catherine admonished him with an appalled expression. You have to stop making assumptions about people. Lexi clearly loves her mother very much. That should tell you something about their relationship. Kids love their mothers no matter what, he said as his gaze dropped to the floor. That doesn't mean the feeling is mutual. His words were spoken in that offhand tone he sometimes adopted, so their meaning wasn't immediately clear. I only peeled back the layer of neutrality covering them because of what he'd told me the previous night about his sister dying. I glanced toward Catherine and saw her studying him with perplexed concentration. Are we going to eat or what? Cade snapped. A slow realization was creeping over Catherine's face. Whose feeling isn't mutual? Let's just go, he demanded and strode from the room. She took off after him and I hurried to follow them. Cade, she yelled, stop. Stop, damn it! He halted and turned to look at her, his expression cold. She walked up to him while I hung back a few feet. Which mother doesn't love her child? She questioned, her gaze locked on him. His face was a stony mask, but emotion was breaking through from the depths of his dark eyes as he stared at her. You tell me, he said. Cade, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. You can't think. It was my fault, he suddenly exclaimed as he backed away from her. I know it was my fault. What? She questioned him desperately as she moved toward him. Baby, what are you talking about? Courtney, he answered brokenly. It was my fault she died. Catherine grabbed his hand. That was an accident, sweetie. You know that. If I hadn't tried to sneak a drink from her can, she'd still be alive, he said in despair. She died because I didn't listen to you. Wonder you stopped loving me. Oh, my poor baby, she exclaimed in anguish. How could you think that I don't love you? You're my precious baby boy. She threw her arms around him. I love you with all my heart. Tears sprang to my eyes as I watched them. Cade looked like he was holding back tears too. His voice was choked up with emotion when he spoke. You didn't want to be around me. Whenever I tried to come into Courtney's room with you... No, baby, she interrupted him. That was because I didn't want you to spend all your time grieving for her. I knew that wasn't healthy, but I couldn't break myself out of it. She pulled back to look at him. I never stopped loving you, she told him fiercely. I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you when you needed me. I lost myself in my depression, but that was never your fault. His tears were falling unchecked now. But No, she cut him off firmly. What happened wasn't your fault. It was an accident, Cade. Just a terrible accident. She tenderly brushed the tears from his cheeks, but she was crying herself when she spoke her next words. I love you, sweetheart. I love you too, Mom, he said, his teary gaze softer than I had ever seen it. They hugged then, and I turned away from the emotional scene as my own tears flowed. I slowly walked further away to give them the privacy I should have given them earlier, but Cade's voice stopped me. Lexi, he called gruffly. What? I asked without turning around, my own voice sounding teary. I heard the sound of footsteps behind me, and Cade came around to face me. He'd managed to dry his eyes, but I was still crying. His gaze softened again as he looked at me. When he reached out and brushed tears from my cheek, my breath caught in my throat. His touch was too tender, and there was too much warmth in his eyes. I stepped back from him, feeling flustered and disconcerted. Pizza, I blurted inanely. We should just order pizza. His eyebrows lifted in perplexity before an amused smile formed on his lips. Pizza sounds good. Yeah, Catherine agreed as she joined us. We'll order pizza and chill here instead of going out. Cade glanced at her with a wry expression. Don't try to talk like that. It doesn't work for you. What? She exclaimed in fake dismay. I'm a cool mom. I can chill. I can chillax. Stop, he fake pleaded. I understood their need for light banter to dissipate the intense emotions they had been overcome with a short time ago. It was the same reason I had brought up my favorite comfort food. I'll order the pizza, I announced. I'll do it, Cade said. None of your fancy schmancy pizza, I told him. We want ooey gooey, artery-clogging pizza. The good stuff. He regarded me with a bemused expression. What is fancy schmancy pizza? I don't know, I said. I've never eaten that kind. I think you're talking about gourmet pizza, he suggested. And how do you know you won't like it if you've never tried it? I didn't say I wouldn't like it, I replied. I just said that's not the kind we need now. Oh, so now it's a need, he remarked. Yes, I confirmed. We need pepperoni pizza and Home Alone. In the midst of pulling out his phone again, he glanced at me with an enigmatic smile. I know I picked the last movie, I acknowledged, but we need to watch Home Alone when we eat our pizza. The bemused expression returned to his face. Right, the movie. I haven't watched that since I was a kid. That's sad, I exclaimed. I watch it at least once a year. Order the pizza and we'll make up for your deprivation. He ordered an extra-large pepperoni pizza for the three of us, but Catherine only ate one piece. I ate 3 pieces myself, and Cade loaded his plate with 2 pieces at a time, although I wasn't sure of the total number he ate. That would kill them, he commented as he laughed for the umpteenth time while we watched Marv and Harry get hit in the head with flying cans of paint. That's why you don't imitate stunts you see on TV, I replied amiably, as the characters in the movie were able to walk away with only minor injuries. The combination of delicious pizza and one of my favorite childhood movies had put me in a wonderful state of contentment. Unfortunately, I have to get going, Catherine said. No, don't turn it off, she told Cade as he grabbed the remote control. Just pause it. John is driving me to the airport. You and Lexi can stay here and finish watching the movie. I wasn't sure who John was, but I assumed that he was one of the household staff who worked here. Maybe they had their own chauffeur. I'd only been living here for a week, so I didn't know everything about their lifestyle yet. Cade and I stood up to walk Catherine out to the car that would take her to the airport. Someone must have already loaded her suitcase into it because she only carried her purse with her. She took leave from me first as she told me that she had enjoyed getting to know me. "It's been fun getting to know you too," I replied. "Thanks for helping me with everything for the party, and thanks for being here while my mom was gone." "It was my pleasure," she said. "I'm sure we'll be seeing each other again. I hope you have a lovely time on your date." "Thanks," I said. "I hope you have a good flight." She smiled at me before turning her attention to Cade. I stepped back several feet to give them their space to say goodbye. She spoke quietly to him as they hugged, and she kissed his cheek before they parted. Instead of getting into the back seat like I'd expected, she sat down in the passenger seat beside the driver and waved at us as they pulled away. Both of us waved back to her and watched the car until it was out of sight. Cade then turned toward the house and saw me. He smiled a beautiful, happy smile that stunned me. Before I could gather my wits, he strode forward and caught me in an enthusiastic hug. "I feel amazing!" he exclaimed. "Oh, that's good," I responded in confoundment. He pulled back, still smiling happily. I could only stare at the look of pure happiness on his face. It was an expression I had never seen on him. "Let's go watch Home Alone," he urged with all the enthusiasm of a little kid. He rushed into the house, and I followed him in a daze. I sat next to him on the couch and glanced at him in bewilderment when he laughed at the antics on screen. It wasn't until the end of the movie, when Kevin was watching the old man hug his granddaughter, that I remembered the emotional scene between Cade and his mom earlier. She had told him that she loved him, and that his sister's death wasn't his fault, and he had cried. I had seen Cade cry. It was a stupefying realization, and it left me completely thrown. My perception of him was altered beyond recognition, and I didn't know how to define him anymore. Trying to combine emotional Cade with heartless, uncaring Cade to make him into one whole person was confusing as hell. Was he going to be a nicer person now? I couldn't be sure, and I didn't know how to deal with this side of him.